It should be live streamed right now. Somebody checking? Vanessa said it's on. All right, excellent. So, Kyle, you're trying to say something? Mute.
Anthony, before you do anything else, hit record.
Okay. All right. Dr. Green and team, as well as my BFT team, welcome to our 21-22 contract negotiations. Today is our September 13th, 2021, and this is our first session. We have 2 more sessions planned. Well, I have my calendar out. Let's just go ahead and throw those dates out for everybody. So today is the 13th. We are going to hold off on the 20th, meet again on the 27th, and then on October 11th. So those are our next sessions, and we plan on doing them all virtually. So good to see you. And somebody can't hear. Mira can't hear. Is anybody else can't hear?
We're
Can
good.
somebody?
I'm good.
Got it.
Can you
Okay.
hear?
All right. So, well, Dr. Green, before I start, is there anything you want to say? You want us to pass our proposals first, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, that would be great. And I also want to welcome everybody. I appreciate, you know, we've been trying to plan this out for a while, not knowing how the beginning of the school year was going to be. And so I'm glad we're here this evening, and, you know, look forward to hearing your proposals. And then we have some of our own. So I'm glad. I have a couple new members of our team. I just wanted to share that. So Antonia Scipio is the director for risk and benefits, and she was part of the earlier team when we met related to the COVID MOA. So we welcome her. We lost a couple members of the elementary group. Rachel Roberts became a director, so she's not on the team anymore. And Christy Boyd, who has been elected the president of VASA, so she's not on there, but we welcome Mr. Jason Sherburne. He's the principal at Longleaf, and you cannot see him because I think they're one of the schools that are having difficulties with internet, and so he's on by phone. And then I've asked Rosemary Browning to sit in, and that will become apparent later as to why, but she's going to be observing this afternoon and in the next couple of sessions. So those are my new team members, and you know, I'm going to speak for them. They're thrilled to be part of this process.
And what is Rosemary's position?
So Rosemary is currently the supervisor of risk, I believe is what her current title is. Rosemary, if that's not correct, please feel free to correct me.
Right. And
Supervisor of Risk and Project Management.
There you go. Risk and Project Management. Thank you, Rosemary.
That title was entirely too short. So we do have the same team, except we do have one addition. By the way, Sandy Edwards is still on the team. She's not here yet, as is Melissa Woods, and she's not here yet either. But our new member of our team is Matt Yount. Matt is a former Brevard County Teacher of the Year, and he's currently at Imperial Estates. So hopefully he'll be signing on soon as well. So, all right, with that said, I will share my screen and start going over some of our proposals. Okay.
While you're working on that, Jason, I see you're on. Are you back on internet?
No, I got it to work on my cell phone.
Got it.
So, Dr. Green, do you see my proposal? Are you
I
looking
do,
at it?
yes, thank you.
Hold on one second. I'm trying to switch my view so I could see everybody or most everybody. Okay. All right. So the first proposal I've given you, Dr. Green, is Article 6, General Conditions of Employment, Section C, School Day Work Week, under planning time, and it would be a new K. I'm not going to read through this whole thing because it is the language that we've had in the last several MOAs about teachers volunteering to cover classes during their planning for compensation. We all know that the situation currently with the amount of absences due to COVID. But I think this is time that we just put this in our contract permanently, because it's not just the COVID situation. We've been struggling with getting an adequate number of substitutes for years. And although this does not entirely solve that problem, it at least helps a bit. So like I said, this is just the cut and paste of the MOA that's in place and the last couple that have been in place, and believe that it's time to get that permanently in our contract. Any questions?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay, and I'm trying to do one proposal per page for you.
Thank you.
Anthony, would you just enlarge that on the bottom right of your screen?
Sure.
Just take that. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet.
Okay, next proposal is also Article 6, General Conditions of Employment. This has to do with our flex time that teachers have, and I'm proposing some changes to that. So first of all, it currently says with at least 24 hours notice. I'm asking that the 24 hours notice is stricken, if that's the right tense of that word, stricken. And this starts with teachers shall be allowed to flexibly schedule. And currently it says up to a half hour. We're seeking that is changed to an hour per week of non-student time. Such time would be added to the beginning or end of the workday to make up for time missed at the beginning or end of a workday of the same week. Such flex time is not intended to coincide with meetings, supervisory duties, and I struck or early release days. And by the way, if some of you are new, if we put something in red and underline it, it means it's new language. And obviously, if we have a strike through, it means we're asking that it's removed. But this we know the amount of time our teachers put into their jobs. We know that many teachers are working well over their 40 hours a week. So we're just asking for a little bit of flexibility, a little more flexibility in their schedules to be able to, run an errand in the morning or the afternoon when it doesn't coincide with anything else. We want to we all want our teachers treated as professionals. I don't think there's any disagreement with that. But, if we can't trust teachers to flex an hour a week, then it's tough to say that they're being treated as professionals. So any questions about that, Dr. Green?
I do. Let me ask about the striking of the early release days. So if I don't want to put intent in your mouth, but if I'm reading this, I'm thinking that, for example, currently, if it's a PD day, well, I'm gonna why strike early release days? That's my question.
Well, why not? Because we felt like, what's the difference if it's
Well,
an
because
early?
tell me about early release days that have PD scheduled. Are you going to consider that a meeting?
Yes, that would
Okay.
be considered a meeting, right? So they'd have to.
Can we add the words professional development?
You can certainly do so on a counter.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any more questions about that?
I don't think so. We might come back with some questions, but
All right.
thank you.
Okay, so this is also Article 6, General Conditions Employment. This is under the 40-hour week. This is about our schools that have an extra hour. I want to say we're up to 5 schools with the extra hour, 4 or 5. Previously this has all been dictated by the state because these schools were considered priority schools or whatever the state designated them as. They said you have to have an extra hour of instruction, and this is what it's going to look like. Now the district has made the decision to provide the extra hour for a few of these schools. And as far as I know, was not because of a state mandate. So, we have a contract for a 40-hour week, but then we have employees or teachers at 5 schools working 45 hours. So it's time that this go in our contract to clarify. So what this says, in the spring of each year, teachers will be informed if their school will have an additional hour the following year, right? So that's something that's happening already. The district or the state is saying, okay, this school is going to have an extra hour. So we obviously want our members of the bargaining unit to know that. Upon learning of that decision, the district shall place a teacher at another school in the same position or agreed upon position if the teacher does not want to or cannot work at the school with the additional time. So we have people who signed up for 40-hour work week. It's in their contract. Now they're being asked to work 45 hours a week. That may not work for them. They might have other obligations. They might have, children at home. They might have elderly parents are taken care of. And unfortunately, many of them might have other jobs that they're running too. So it doesn't always work for these teachers to do so. This, I don't want to say has already completely been, the district has already been completely doing this, but in most cases, if there is somebody who feels like it's not going to work for them, they've been able to transfer, but not everybody has been able to do that. But we just don't think that you sign up for a 40-hour work week and now all of a sudden it's 45. If that's the case, and you don't want to do it, you should be able to transfer. Okay, so we're asking that teachers will be compensated time and a half of their hourly rate for the hours beyond 40. Currently, they are receiving their hourly, but we're asking that that's up to time and a half. And then finally, teachers at the school sites with additional hours shall be provided an additional 50 minutes of planning per week. Administrators must inform their staff during pre-planning when when the additional planning time will be provided. So these teachers are having currently 5 more hours of instruction without any additional time to plan for that instruction. It makes sense that they should have some additional time to do so. I know there are probably some parameters, especially around when it's state dictated, what is done with that hour. So I've tried to be a little flexible there and say, find 50 minutes extra for these teachers at some point throughout the week so they can do some additional planning. I mean, ideally, I would have just said they'll get an extra hour of planning each week out of those 5 hours, but I know that might be a little more complicated than that. So what I'm asking is that somewhere in that 45-hour week, those administrators come up with an extra hour. Any questions on that one?
I do not.
Okay. All right, next one, 40-hour work week. We're asking for a new F there. Members of the bargaining unit who are responsible for maintaining CTE lab equipment, such as an automotive lab, shall receive an additional 8-hour planning day once per semester. The district will provide a substitute teacher for their additional planning period. We've met with many of these CTE teachers, and they have, requirements that are time consuming above and beyond what a classroom teacher would have, as far as this equipment and what they need to do to make sure that it's up to par. So we're asking for an additional hour on that. Kyle, is there anything else you would add to that one? I know you met with those teachers.
I would just add 2 things. Dr. Green, we're really looking at addressing there's a lot of CTE teachers that have what I would believe is called a lab. And some of them may be like a computer lab or a more typical classroom. We're not so much looking at that sort of a CTE lab. We're more looking towards the automotive labs. And I think it's some construction. Some of the high schools have construction programs or aviation programs. And a lot of this equipment is on a servicing schedule where they have to be properly maintained and inspected, not only just to make sure it stays working, but also for student safety. And I think for requirements for having students using the equipment. And when we met with these teachers, we realized that this was very overburdened. And a lot of these teachers were doing it over the summer on their free time. So we were trying to find some type of solution where these teachers can have the ability during the school year to properly maintain the equipment and getting the equipment that needs to be serviced taken care of. So if there's a better way, the label the CTE lab equipment, we would definitely be open to that.
Do you have, or can you provide a list of the specific programs that you're looking at that have those lab facilities? Because I could say like a family consumer science teacher has a sewing lab or a cooking lab.
No,
like you said, we have computer labs.
I don't have an extensive list. I believe in the CTE world, there is a different designation for certain programs and what's required out of those programs. And I know in previous times we've worked with, I don't know if it's Dr. Rutledge or Miss Rutledge, about CTE programs, and she may be able to find some clarification, but we haven't talked to her about this language right here.
Okay.
So I don't know if that would be the avenue to go.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to the next proposal, has to do with involuntary transfers. And we're trying to add a sentence in there, and it says, so this is 3B. Additionally, annual contract teachers with 5 or more years of experience and a highly effective or effective evaluation for the last 2 years in the district shall be assigned to position at the school prior to the reappointment of annual contract teachers with less than 5 years of experience. So we all know that we're getting to a place where we have more and more annual contract teachers. Eventually, all the teachers in this district will be annual contract teachers. This situation that we're concerned about is, let's say that it is, Kyle's, what are we up to, 13th year, maybe 12th or 13th year, being an annual contract teacher. He's had all great evaluations. And then, Vanessa is a second year annual contract teacher. Why, but Kyle's got a big loud mouth, and Vanessa is the teacher's pet, the principal's pet. She tolerated that. That's great. Why are we going to move, Kyle out and keep Vanessa there? So we try to put a little flexibility in there with saying five or more years of experience to give the principals some some freedom with that, some degree of choice, but there's an inherent unfairness to moving somebody who's doing a good job with a decade of experience versus somebody who's there for the second year.
Okay.
Any questions on that one?
No.
Okay. Okay. Next proposal has to do with comp time utilization. So we all know that with all the coverage going on now, the short staffed teachers, folks are accruing a lot of comp time, and we need to make sure that they have the opportunity to use it. I mean, so we're at 24 hours currently. We want to see that go up to 40 hours, which would be a full work week of being able to use comp time. It's we're fortunate to have comp time in our district, and we appreciate it. And when money is tight, especially, I know the principals appreciate being able to offer comp time because that's all they can do. But in addition to accruing the comp time, we really got to be able to use it. And we know that with all the coverage, the accrual this year and last year has been great. Any questions on that one?
No.
Okay. All right, next one, teacher protection. So this has to deal with cameras at the workplace. So this would be Article 7. Every effort shall be made, and this is all new language, every effort shall be made to not place a video and/or recording device with direct view of a teacher desk. Exceptions may be made for safety if there's no other possible location for the device to fully cover an area. We know that there has been some cameras placed in certain locations that end up literally being right above a teacher's head at their desk all day long. And frankly, I know that nobody on this call would really appreciate that a camera literally right there all day long. So that's the first part of it. Any recordings captured from video and/or recordings cannot be used in a teacher evaluation. Number 2, video and/or audio recordings may not be viewed synchronously to discipline a member of the bargaining unit. Administrators may use recorded materials as part of the investigative process when requested from Brevard Public Schools District Security. So video cameras in the school are becoming more prevalent, and we know what they're there for. They're there to protect not only the students, but protect the staff. We totally get that and understand that. But also there's the concern that an administrator may just be sitting in their office watching for somebody to do something wrong and, is going to initiate a discipline proceeding based on the video they're sitting there watching in their office. Where we understand that they could be used as part of the investigative process, but we just don't want somebody watching all day looking for somebody to do something wrong. Any questions about that?
So is that what 2 is saying when you say may not be viewed synchronously? Like, is that live video, a live feed?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, next one. This is This is a rather extensive one, and Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you for this one.
Okay, so I think I would first like to just start with what we are attempting to do and understand that there may be some errors in here because I believe, Dr. Green, your staff may have some more expertise on this than we do. And we did consider board policy and current board procedures and understand what's already in place and try to capture that into a contract language form. So if something's left out, there's no intention of leaving something out that you feel is important. There's no intention of us trying to get one over on the district or anything like that. I guess what I'm really asking for is just assume if we didn't mention something or you feel like something very important was left out, we are really open to a discussion. And we did not intend that as a consequence. So, please give us the leadway of the best intentions on this one. I also want to start with Florida statute on the drug-free workplace. So Florida statute on a drug-free workplace states a drug-free workplace program requirements pursuant to the section shall be a mandatory topic of negotiations. So very clearly, Florida statute, where all the board policy and procedures start from, identify the drug-free workplace as a mandatory subject of bargaining. It says it in the statute. With that being said, we also looked in Brevard what other municipalities are doing and the county firefighters are doing. And a lot of this language is based on what the agreement that Brevard has with the county firefighters. So I want to start with the board and the Brevard Federation of Teachers recognizes that substance abuse in our nation and our community exacts staggering costs in both human and economic terms. Substance abuse causes impaired job performance, lost productivity, absences, accidents, wasted materials, lowered morale, higher health costs, diminished interpersonal relationship skills. The board commits to create and maintain a drug-free workplace. That comes directly from the board procedure. So a lot of what this is trying to take what the board is already doing and put it into contract language. There is some changes. I will highlight them. There is a list of definitions. I don't think it would be helpful for me to read it to you. The hope is that these actually compare to what the board already has in policy. Do you need me to read them, Dr. Green, or are we good on that?
So say that again. It is what the new policy states. Is that what I heard you just say?
That's the hope. If I left something out, it was unintended.
Okay.
So after the definitions, we just describe a prescription and non-prescription medication. We use Florida statute, federal and state law to describe that. The appropriate use of legally prescribed drugs and non-prescription medication is not prohibited. Prescription or non-prescription medication means a drug or medication obtained pursuant to a prescription as defined by Florida statute. Our medication is authorized pursuant to federal or state law for general distribution and use without a prescription in the treatment of human diseases, ailments, or injuries. This is not an attempt, Dr. Green, to make medical marijuana legal in Brevard Public Schools. I want to be very clear on that. I don't want any misinterpretation on what this is. All members of the bargaining unit shall be subject to post-accident drug test as defined in this agreement and reasonable suspicion. The district is already doing this. I think you would agree.
Mm-hmm.
So next we go to lay out the types of testing. The first is a reasonable suspicion testing. This type of testing means belief that any unit member is using or has used drugs, alcohol in violation of this article based upon objective and facts and reasonable inferences drawn from those facts in light of experience. Reasonable suspicion drug testing shall not be required except upon the recommendation of a supervisor based on training provided. Among other things, such facts and inferences may be based upon an observation while at work, such as direct observation of drug or alcohol use, or of the physical symptoms or manifestations of being under the influence of drugs and alcohol. Abnormal conduct or erratic behavior while at work or significant deterioration in work performance. A report of drug, alcohol, or unauthorized I'm sorry, we need to strike that. We'll fix that, Dr. Green. The county firefighters can't use tobacco. That's why that was in there. We will fix that. Provided by a reliable, credible source which has been independently corroborated. Evidence that a unit member has tampered with a drug or alcohol test during his employment with Brevard County, his or her. Evidence and or observation that a unit member has caused or contributed to an accident while at work due to any impairment symptoms which appear to affect alertness, coordination, reaction, response, or safety. Evidence that a unit member has used, possessed, sold, solicited, transferred drugs or alcohol while working or while on school board premises or while operating the school board's vehicles, machinery, or equipment. Additional signs and symptoms of alcohol misuse may include one or more following symptoms: dulled mental process, lack of coordination, odor of alcohol in the breath, possible constricted pupils, sleepy condition, slowed reaction rate, slurred speech. Prior to reasonable suspicion test, the appropriate level of supervision supervisor shall sign a completed checklist from documented the reasonable suspicion. From my assumption, this is probably already done in some form or another with HR when you direct a teacher. So
Yes.
the next thing is we really wanted to find out a way to define what a post-accident drug screening is. Because we've had calls that range all the way from, a teacher fell, broke his or her leg and went to the hospital. That's probably an accident that requires a drug screening. To, I got stung by a bee and I was told to fill out an incident report. I would argue that that is not an incident, that's an accident that should require drug testing. And we get anywhere in between. So I think it's really important that we try to define that. And this would define the post-accident testing. All members of the bargaining unit will be subject to a drug and or alcohol testing if they're involved in an accident that results of any one of the following: a fatality or injuries requiring medical attention away from the accident scene. And the reason we put that in there is because if you just slipped and you had to get a Band-Aid from the nurse, we're not quite sure that requires a drug screening. Based on some of the things we have seen, some principals may send that as an incident report, our school secretary, and that may end up being a drug screening. At another school, that may not end up being a drug screening. So we're really trying to clarify that. Additionally, if you're operating a vehicle, for whatever reason, you crash a vehicle, you're issued a citation, that would be a post-accident testing. Post-accident drug and alcohol tests must be performed as soon as possible. Drug tests must be performed within 24 hours following an accident. I believe that's already the policy. If you get injured on the job, alcohol tests must be performed within 8 hours. And then the requirement to do post-accident testing should in no way interfere with necessary medical attention. I think we would all agree to that. The next section talks about if a member of the bargaining unit refuses or falsifies or tampers with a test. A member of the bargaining unit who refuses to comply with a request as provided in this article for drug or alcohol testing, who provides false information in connection with a test, or who attempts to falsify a test result through tampering, contamination, adulteration, or substitution, shall be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination for insubordination. Failure to provide an adequate breath or urine sample for testing within a reasonable time without a valid medical explanation from a doctor shall constitute refusal to submit. So I believe this is probably something you guys are already doing in your office if a teacher refuses. So we're putting that in writing. And finally, this is one of the large changes. And I do want to highlight that this, once again, is already in Brevard County. There's multiple municipalities that do this in Brevard County. And the county firefighters also do this in Brevard County. In my experience in the military, this was already done in the military as well when we looked at substance abuse. Anywhere you look up the Drug-Free Workplace Act and any information you find about the Drug-Free Workplace Act, it will say that the number one goal is not to terminate an employee. The number one goal is actually to rehab that employee. The number one goal is to rehab anybody to make them a better person. So this recognizes that. A unit member who voluntarily comes forth and requests assistance will be encouraged to obtain assistance through the school board's EAP. The county will make reasonable efforts to assist and encourage the unit member to complete any necessary rehabilitation program. A unit member not currently under a drug or alcohol rehabilitation program may voluntarily enter such a program without disciplinary action being taken against him or her. Any information concerning the participation in a rehabilitation program shall remain absolutely confidential. I believe this is already happening, Dr. Green, that if somebody asks us to go to EAP, the district helps them with that, and it's confidential and it's not used for discipline. A unit member who voluntarily participates in a drug or alcohol rehab program may be temporarily reassigned within the district or placed on leave. Members of the bargaining unit may use sick leave or annual leave while undergoing rehabilitation. The use of leave time shall be subject to approval. So I believe everything I covered so far on the rehabilitation is already happening. This would be the change. The board may provide the opportunity for employees to enter a board-approved sponsored rehabilitation program. The parties agree that the board has the sole authority to determine whether to maintain and or to continue any board-approved or sponsored rehabilitation program, and that any approval for an employee to enter a rehabilitation program may be limited by the board to one opportunity during an employee's employment. Every unit member shall be allowed a one-time opportunity to voluntarily enter a board-approved sponsored rehabilitation program during the course of his or her employment during the course, assuming that no disciplinary action is pending. Any further that the employee has done nothing for which he could be subject to the disciplinary action, and that no accident, injury, or reasonable suspicion testing has occurred prior to the time of such request. The board and the Brevard Federation of Teachers encourages employees to volunteer in seeking assistance by way of professional counseling within 30 minutes of notification to attest. Members of the bargaining unit shall have the one-time opportunity to request assistance as outlined above. Members of the bargaining unit must accept and sign a rehabilitation program when presented by the board. If an employee enters a board-approved sponsored rehabilitation program, upon successful completion of rehabilitation as determined by the county designated physician, the employee shall be returned to his regular duty assignment or the equivalent thereof. Basically, if they came back to work, I know they might not have the exact assignment, for that grade level. I think you understand that, Dr. Green.
Mm-hmm.
If follow-up care is prescribed after treatment, such shall be imposed by the county as a condition of continuing employment. Immediately upon employee's discharge from a rehabilitation program, the employee will provide the board with documentation of the following up requirement, as well as permission for the board to ascertain whether an employee has been and is abiding by the program's requirements. Moreover, the parties agree that entry into such a rehabilitation program shall be deemed to constitute reasonable suspicion that the employee has in his system are in using controlled substances, drugs or alcohol, and that accordingly the employee may be subject to testing procedures as required by the board for a period not to exceed 24 months from the date the employee is released from treatment. So I want to point out one thing that, once again, where we got this from, and that it's already in Brevard's municipalities. And one of the reasons I feel like that's really important to point that out is they receive federal funding. I know last year when we were talking about employees who fail drug tests or offering them rehab, or if we continue to employ an employee that failed a drug test, there was a lot of talk of, well, we can't certify that we're a drug-free workplace and we won't be able to receive any federal funding. Well, county governments, local city governments, county firefighters definitely receive federal funding. They have the same requirement. They're certified that they have a drug-free workplace. This requirement does not change that you have a drug-free workplace. This is just changing the rules of your drug-free workplace. It still has the number one goal of rehabilitating the employee. Additionally, this is a new section as well that I do not believe you have in board procedure or policy. We would like to set up an expedited grievance for reasonable suspicion testing. And the reason why is there's been a few times that a principal or supervisor has determined reasonable suspicion, and we have had concerns about whether or not that met the burden of reasonable suspicion. But in our grievance timeline, there is no really quick way to handle this situation other than telling the employee to get tested, or else they can be in trouble for insubordination and then grieving it later. But the district if the employee would fail the test, the district would already have that positive test and the cat's out of the bag. And as we know, trying to put it back in the bag is really hard. So this would help address this. None of this grievance procedure set forth below shall be used to or have the effect of halting or interrupting the testing procedure, including collection of the sample itself. However, once this procedure is properly invoked and followed, no results of the test shall be released except in accordance with this procedure. Within 24 hours of receiving written notice of testing, the union member of the union may invoke expedited challenging the board's reasonable suspicion determination. A step 3 grievance will be scheduled within 24 hours of receiving notice. The scope of the step 3 grievance shall be limited to determining whether the county had reasonable suspicion to subject the member of the bargaining unit to drug testing. The board shall have the burden of proof on this issue, and the facts upon which the board may rely shall be limited to those relevant to the issue of the board's reasonable suspicion and as otherwise set forth in the board's written notice of reasonable suspicion and as might be subsequently developed. So what we're really asking is if we have a problem that we can take it immediately to step 3 and present our case and then try to get a really quick ruling in return. We're not trying to slow down the collection of the sample. This doesn't do this. This would still require the employee to follow whatever procedures for testing, but this would allow us to challenge the reasonable suspicion. Should the step 3 or an arbitrator determine that the board did not have reasonable suspicion, the test results shall not be communicated to either the board or the union except by permission of the tested unit member. Records of the test results should not be used by the board against a unit member in any future proceedings. So I know that was quite a lot, Dr. Green.
So I have a couple of questions. Can you go all the way back to page 9? I think that's where it started.
Yep.
Oh, keep going to 8. I thought it was on 9. Okay. So let me ask a couple questions. First of all, why up until the point where you got to the grievance piece, and there might have been another piece right before that, I can't remember because I just have what's on the screen. I don't have your document yet. Why not just put our technical guide in there?
You mean the actual technical guide or reference to it?
Okay, or reference to it.
So my concern with referencing to your technical guide was that if we reference to a board policy or a technical guide that could be changed by the board, but it was inside of a contract that needed to be negotiated, how would we go about doing that? So if we reference it, the policy number 2, and tomorrow, I'm not saying this could happen, but tomorrow the board wakes up and decides to change policy number 2, how does that impact the contract that we have? Does that make sense to you, Dr. Green?
Yes. So what was that statute about subject to bargaining?
So the statute that was subject to bargaining is Florida statute chapter 440, and it's actually 440.102. It's a drug-free workplace program requirements. Okay,
go to page 9 toward the top. Okay, types of testing. I just want to see something. Wait, stop. There was something when you were reading the enumerated list that I didn't understand what it was related to, and I'm trying to get A in my head.
Was it about reasonable suspicion or?
No, it was on this. It was on this, and I'm trying to find the enumerated one. So I guess so. You're saying that you mirrored this language after something that's out there with another entity. Is that what I heard?
Yes, and
because like some of them I just don't understand, and we'll, when we look at it and we caucus, and we'll, that this one of course is going to take a while to go through, but I think I just have to understand how some of the enumerated things below A have any connection. So I was trying to see what A was really saying.
I mean, I think A basically lays out a definition of what reasonable suspicion is. And I think why that's important, because if we decided to grieve reasonable suspicion, we would look in our contract and look for that definition. You know, what do you determine as reasonable suspicion? You may say, okay, one of these don't apply. And if that's the case, or you may have your own list that you're
Okay.
already operating off of.
So I know, Dr. Green, one of the things when I was reviewing this with Kyle, like it talks about like a vehicle accident, you know, maybe that's what you're thinking, but remember, some of our employees do use district vehicles. So.
Okay. All right. Keep scrolling down, please. So I just want to point out that because you mentioned specifically bee stings, you know, insect bites lead to a lot of allergic reactions to a lot of things, as well as falls, even if it doesn't end up with a trip to the hospital. Like, a lot of things manifest itself after the fact. So insect bites and things such as that, I just want to point out, that's commonplace across a lot of work sites.
Dr. Green, I think we are going to have a very long bargaining
I just am saying,
years if we're going to say that people that get stung by bees should lead to a drug test.
well, this is not the first time. It might be the first time of a teacher, but our maintenance people go all the time.
Dr. Green, I would like to know how much it costs when we send an employee to get a drug test. Like, how much does that cost the district?
I will have to find that out. I can't
the
answer
cost
that
of the
right
drug test itself, and then also considering the cost of the teacher actually leaving campus to go get that drug test, because
I'm just
sorry.
telling you, I was just making a point that's commonplace. We're not out of the ordinary there.
Well, I get it. And I've made phone calls, and I did not shoot the messenger when I talked to the person who handled my bee sting question last week or the week before. But that's to me is a little bit over the top. And I think that's what we're trying to correct here, or come to some sort of common ground, or some sort of discussion, because I just think that is a waste of a teacher's time. If they get stung by a bee, if they have an allergic reaction, that's different. They have EpiPens for that. I think even in this language, it talks about the person has to be transported to somewhere else. But if they're just like, hey, I just got stung by a bee, want to let you know there's a nest up there so we can get taken care of so no student gets stung by a bee. Oh, you got to go do a drug test now. I mean,
all right.
You know,
I just want to have some common sense discussions here about what we send our employees for. Yeah.
Dr. Green, real quick, just another example I would use, not to get caught on the weeds on a bug screen, a bug bite. I think I understand what you were trying to say. Is we had an incident last year where a member of our bargaining unit contacted me and was like, hey, I slipped and fell last week at school, totally fine. But today the school secretary handed me an incident report, told me I needed to fill it out and go get drug tested, but the incident was last week. Like, there's a lot of confusion. Well, if you were hurt, I understand that. But if it happened last week and you didn't, you slipped, like, I don't understand that connection a week later. Okay. So I think the main goal is you may already be doing some of this stuff, Dr. Green, and it may just, okay, this is when we send people for a post-accident screening, and you may already have a policy on this. We honestly just don't know what it is, because it's not applied equitably from what we can tell.
Got it. Keep scrolling. So number 7 is expedited grievance for reasonable suspicion only.
Yes, that is the only reason you can. Obviously we were still able to grieve any other part of the contract, but that would be the only reason we would be able to go to a step 3 grievance and that expedited time frame, and it would have to be limited in scope on that.
Okay.
And and part of in there we put about scope is so that we don't get in a. And I'm not saying anybody has done this, but in a reasonable suspicion, well, 2 weeks ago, I kind of thought this. And then, a week ago, I kind of thought this. But then today, I thought that. We understand that reasonable suspicion probably needs to be more in the immediate time. And I'm sure you do training on this with your supervisors already. So it's more just capturing that into writing.
Okay. I think that was it. Keep scrolling down a little bit more. Okay, I don't have any other questions right now.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Green.
you.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next proposal. It's about paid leaves of absence or parental leave. I think we were all really proud of the work we did last year to become what we believe to be true as the first district in the state to have any kind of parental leave. But we feel like we want to keep moving that a little further. Currently, we're at 5 days. We'd like to make that 10 days. We don't think that the cost of this was so significant to prohibit it. I do believe that we requested some public documents that we haven't received yet as far as the cost. But this has been a really nice thing to have for our teachers as well as all the employees, is to not have to use your sick leave because you had a child or adopted a child. And, it goes without saying that this is something that our district could be proud of and is leading the way, but let's lead the way a little more with 2 weeks. I mean, because we know 2 weeks is still, it's a token. It's not, full parental leave, but we got to keep moving this great accomplishment forward. And we've also removed the sentence about not being able to participate in sick leave buyback in any year in which the parental leave is used. One of the reasons we did that is because we actually don't believe this is helpful to the district, because if they're not using their sick leave buyback in the current year and they're using it 15 years or 20 years or 30 years down the road, that sick leave is going to cost the district a whole lot more than it would have in this first year, as hopefully teachers' salaries and hourly rates continue to grow. So just to reiterate, this is actually a benefit to the district and the employee, but primarily to the district because it would save money in the long run. Any questions on that?
No.
And then our final proposal for today.
What does that mean for today?
Well, because there are some that involve financial.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And we decided we weren't going to talk about money.
Final language proposal.
Yes, final language proposal. Yes. So this is a paid leave again. Under usage, we want to add a 3 that says sick leave will not be charged, and if employee needs to attend a scheduled appointment at an employee welfare center or a virtual appointment, the time allotted for this shall not exceed 4 hours. We all know that there are serious concerns with our health insurance trust fund. We know there's serious concerns that we're spending more than we're bringing in. We know that we've been trying to steer our employees to certain facilities in order to save them money, as well as to save our trust fund money. We know that raises could be bigger if more money wasn't being used to keep this health insurance trust fund afloat. We have these fantastic well-care centers in this district that, people who use them, including myself, have nothing but great things to say about. So we want to get people into these well-care centers. because it's going to lead to a healthier workforce, but is also going to save them money and save our plan money. So this is a way to steer them to do that, as well as take advantage of our telehealth options, either through Marathon Well Care Centers or through I think we have MD Live right now for telehealth. So we said the time shall not be allotted, shall not exceed 4 hours. We kind of try to figure, some of these locations, if you're at a school, on Beachside, it could take you 45 minutes to get to the Vieira Well Care Center, and then an appointment, 45-minute drive back. So we wanted to make it in a 4-hour increment, but we think that this is important. We think we've been trying to make some changes to this healthcare plan for the benefit of everyone, and using this language would be a way to do so. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, and that is it for today.
Oh, are we hanging up? No. Can you give me, because I just want to spread my proposal thing out. I forgot one page of thing, so I'm going to do that. So if you'll give me like 10 minutes, can we take a short 10-minute break?
Yeah.
We don't even
And
have to
I'll
work out
email
it.
this proposal over to you so you can have a copy of it.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna
So
somehow.
you guys gonna sign out and then
I'm not even gonna sign out. I'm just gonna do my camera and my
Right. Anthony, stop recording.
yeah, my camera and my mute button, and then I'll be back in.
And
All
then
right.
you can stay live on YouTube if you want, or you can, stop that as well, but you have to restart it. If you stop it, that's up to you. Or you could just say we're on break, however you want to handle
Yeah,
that.
let's stop the live stream.